Welcome to the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
Welcome back to the Shadow Frequency. I'm Juniper, and tonight we're tuning into a case that feels less like a crime scene and more like a message that was never fully received. There are mysteries where the terror comes from what was found, and then there are mysteries where the terror comes from what was almost understood. Tonight's episode sits right there, in that strange dead space between science, spirit, and something blinking at the edge of the sky. Tonight, I'm pulling out episode 351, The Lead Masks Case, The Men Waiting for a Signal. In August of 1966, two Brazilian electronics technicians, Miguel José Viana and Manoel Pereira Cruz, left home saying they were going to buy work materials. Days later, their bodies were found on Morro do Vintém, a hillside near Niterói, across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. They were dressed in suits and raincoats. They had crude lead masks near or over their eyes. Nearby were towels, a water bottle, and a strange note with timed instructions. Arrive at the location, ingest capsules, protect the metals, and wait for the signal. And this is where this case begins to turn cold. No obvious violence, no clean cause of death, no proper toxicology answer. Just two men on a hill, dressed like they were prepared for something, waiting for something, and never returning. Chris, I'll come to you first. What do you make of a case like this? Two electronics men, lead masks, and a note that literally says to wait for the signal?
June, it's the wording that gets me. Wait for the signal sounds so deliberate. It does not feel like panic or confusion. It feels like someone believed a process was underway, and that's what makes it so unsettling.
Right.
These weren't random objects tossed around a scene. It feels organized.
Exactly. It's that little bit of order inside of all the madness that makes the whole thing feel so much worse, like the chaos had a schedule. Matt, how about you? When you hear lead masks and ingest capsules, where does your mind go first?
Honestly, June, my mind goes straight to preparation, not just death, not just crime, but preparation.
Right.
These men seem like they expected something powerful enough that they needed protection. And whether that was light, energy, radiation, spirits, or something from above, they were taking it seriously.
That is exactly the chill of it. They weren't running from the unknown. They may have been walking right toward it. And with that, Matt, let's step into tonight's case.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson. Produced by Juniper Ravenwood. With Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
Thanks, Juniper, and you are absolutely right about this one, because tonight's file has that awful little combination that makes a case crawl under your skin. Ordinary men, ordinary errands, and then one final scene that looks arranged by someone who knew too much. So let's open it. August 1966, Brazil. Two men, Miguel José Viana and Manoel Pereira de Cruz, leave Campos dos Goitacazes, a city north of Rio de Janeiro, and tell their families they are heading out for work materials. These are not men drifting into some foggy legend. They are electronics technicians, practical men, familiar with wires, equipment, parts, signals, and invisible forces you cannot see but can measure. They reportedly carry a large amount of money, and the trip sounds normal enough that nobody stops them at the door and says, "Wait, why are you really going?" But that is how the strangest cases often begin. not with screaming, not with thunder, just two men stepping out of daily life, saying they will be back, and then moving toward a hill where something seems to be waiting. Their trail leads to Niterói, across the bay from Rio de Janeiro, and the details become very specific, which somehow makes the whole thing worse. They are said to visit an electronics shop. They buy raincoats. They stop for water near Morro do Vintém. It overlooks a living city. People are nearby. Streets, houses, voices, daylight, all of that ordinary human noise. And yet Miguel and Manoel appear to be following a schedule that belongs to another world entirely. I keep coming back to the raincoats because raincoats are practical, almost boring. You buy them because you expect weather, or because someone told you to be prepared, or because the plan requires you to stay on that hill no matter what the sky does. And then there is the water bottle. Again, practical, human, mundane. They are not behaving like men who expect to vanish. They are behaving like men who expect to endure a process, something timed, something with steps, something that needed a location, a moment, and obedience. They climb toward Morro do Vintém, not as if fleeing, but as if arriving for an appointment. And now I'm going to pull something from the file here because this is the place that gives the whole case its heartbeat. It's a typed copy of the note as it has been reported in case summaries, the strange instruction sheet found near the bodies. The wording varies a little in translation, but the core is chilling. Be at the determined location at 1630. At 1830, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals. Wait for signal. That is not a farewell note. It does not read like panic. It reads like a procedure. It reads like two men had been given operating instructions for contact with something they believed was real. Protect metals is such a strange phrase, especially for electronics technicians. Metals are conductors. Metals are components. Metals can be precious, symbolic, magnetic, or simply part of an experiment. And wait for signal. That line is the hook in the skin. A signal from whom? A flash in the sky? A tone on a receiver? A voice in the head? A craft? A spirit? The note suggests they did not believe they were going to the hill to die. They believed they were going there to receive something. Days later, the hill gives up the answer, or at least the shape of one. The bodies of Miguel and Manoel are found lying side by side on Morro do Vintém. Not hidden, not buried, not thrown in the brush in some frantic attempt to erase a crime. Side by side, as if placed there, or as if they had lain down together when the moment came. They are dressed in suits and raincoats. Near or over their eyes are crude masks made of lead. Handmade shields that look less like costume pieces and more like protection from something fierce. There are no obvious signs of violence, no clear gunshot wound, no knife attack, no struggle that tells investigators, here, this is where it happened. Nearby are towels, the water bottle, personal items, and that note with its countdown into the unknown. Imagine the first people standing over that scene. Two suited technicians on a Brazilian hillside, wearing lead over their eyes with instructions to take capsules and wait for a signal. The city below them continues breathing, but up there, the hill feels like a place where the world briefly stopped. The lead masks are what turn this from strange death into legend. Lead is heavy, dull, and protective. We associate it with shielding, radiation, X-rays, blinding force, something dangerous to the eyes. And these masks were not elegant laboratory equipment. They were crude, cut by hand, shaped just enough to cover the eyes as if someone understood the idea of protection. If Miguel and Manoel expected a light, maybe they believed the mask would let them survive it. If they expected energy, maybe they believed lead would block it. If they were attempting contact with spirits, maybe the masks were part ritual, part machine, part talisman. It lives right on the border between electronics and mysticism, between radio culture and seance culture, between men who repaired devices and men who may have believed the universe itself was about to transmit. The note does not say, pray. It does not say, goodbye. It says, wait. are whispers around the case that make that waiting feel even darker. Authorities reportedly found links to spiritual experiments and literature connected to extraterrestrial contact. So now the men are no longer just technicians on a buying trip. They become seekers, experimenters, men reaching towards something beyond ordinary life with tools they thought they could bridge the gap. In the 1960s, flying saucers were not just movie monsters or tabloid jokes. For many people, they were signs of a larger reality pressing against the edges of the modern world. Radios pulled voices from the air. Televisions caught invisible waves and made them visible. Rockets were leaving Earth. Why wouldn't some people believe the next signal might come from somewhere stranger? If someone told Miguel and Manoel there was a place, a time, a method, and a signal waiting on that hill, then the most frightening part may not be that they believed it. The most frightening part is that they followed the instructions exactly, right up to the silence. And that is where we have to leave the first half for a moment. Two men on a hill, lead over their eyes, waiting for a signal that may have already been too late.
That note is going to bother me all night. It sounds like instructions for something nobody else was allowed to understand.
It's the calmness of it. The scene does not feel chaotic. It feels like they believed they were exactly where they were supposed to be.
Coming up, we'll look at the investigation, the failed toxicology, the missing money, the one grounded theory that actually does make sense, and why it still doesn't close the case. Juniper and Chris, over to you.
Two men walked up a hill wearing suits, raincoats, and handmade lead masks, following instructions no one has ever fully explained. Whatever signal they were waiting for, it left behind only silence, suspicion, and one of Brazil's strangest unsolved mysteries.
So far, this case feels like a countdown with the last number missing. Two men leave home, follow instructions, climb a hill, and vanish into one of the strangest death scenes in paranormal history. And I have to wonder what everyone listening's thinking right now. Was this contact? Was this ritual? Was this a trap? Or did Miguel and Manoel know something that never made it into the official record? Chris, take us into the break.
Thanks, June. I'll be honest, this one has that particular shadow frequency chill to it, because the objects are so simple. A note, a bottle of water, raincoats, lead masks, nothing flashy, and yet every piece feels like it belongs to some larger machine we can't see. Before we climb back up that hill, make sure you like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It really does help the algorithms know we're out here in the dark, waving a little lantern around. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and all the major podcast directories. And stop by shadowfrequencypodcast.com for every episode, the companion blog, merch, show notes, and links to every platform. You can also support the show by buying us a coffee right there on the website. And if you've got a strange story, theory, or late night thought, reach out through the website by email or voice message. Yours might end up on a future episode. June, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Now it's time to fire up the Spectral Cosmic Message Materializer. I'm flipping the old silver switches, warming up the static coils, and letting the machine chew through the fog for a second.
Message retrieved from the void.
There it is. Something just rattled loose from the other side of the frequency. Yellow note drifting in with the smell of summer air and porch lights. As we unfold this one carefully to Sue's calling from the edge of the signal. Tonight's message comes from Steve in Florida, who listens on Spotify, and he writes, "Hey, Shadow Frequency crew, this is Steve down in Florida. Most evenings, once the sun starts dropping and the heat finally backs off a little, I'll sit out on the deck with Spotify playing through a little speaker. The kids usually wander in and out, but it's the UFOs or ancient mysteries. They end up sitting there with me asking questions until the episode is over. Love the way you all make the stories creepy without making them feel fake. Keep watching the skies and don't trust the quiet nights." Steve, I love that. First of all, sitting on the deck in Florida at evening with the kids listening is just about perfect for this show. That is exactly the kind of setting where a strange light in the sky would suddenly become everybody's business. And I love that the kids are into UFOs and ancient mysteries. Start them early. Before you know it, they'll be correcting adults at cookouts about the difference between a haunting and a time slip. Thank you so much for listening on Spotify, Steve, and for everyone else, you can always reach us by email at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. Now we're going to hand it back over to Chris for the Shadow News.
Cheers, June. Steve sounds like he's got the perfect listening setup there. Evening deck, Florida sky, kids getting pulled into UFOs and ancient mysteries. That's how lifelong weirdos are made, and I mean that as the highest compliment. One of the longest-running Noah's Ark mysteries may be entering a new phase after the group Noah's Ark Scans said it has received official Turkish permission for a broader non-destructive study of the Durapanar Formation near Mount Ararat. The team says earlier radar and soil work hinted at buried structure-like features, but geologists have argued for years that the site is most likely a natural rock formation. So this new round of scans may not prove the Ark is there, but it could sharpen the debate in a big way. Iron Oathern News. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb says he has been asked by the White House, Pentagon, FBI and intelligence agencies to help lead a new UAP Science Advisory Council focused on the UFO mystery. Loeb says the council's job will be to review existing data and recommend better ways to collect new evidence, while Defense Scoop reports the effort is tied to a new interagency UAP governance push inside the Trump administration. If it moves forward as described, it could become one of the most unusual science panels in Washington. June, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Chris, and that really does tie into tonight's case in a strange way. Whether it's Mount Ararat, UAP councils, or two men on a hill in Brazil, people keep returning to the same question. What if the old mysteries were never fully investigated because we didn't yet know how to ask the right questions? And now we head into the second half of tonight's story. The case gets more frustrating, more human, and in some ways even colder because once the investigation begins, the biggest answer disappears. Matt, bring us back to Morro do Vintém.
The lead mask's case feels like a true crime story until the clues start pointing somewhere stranger. Capsules, missing money, spiritual experiments, UFO rumors, and a note saying wait for the signal all turn a death scene into something that still refuses to make sense.
Thanks, Juniper. And Steve, listening out on the deck in Florida with the kids nearby, that is exactly the kind of setting where this story would start messing with you. And Chris, those news items fit the nerve of tonight's episode too. Old mysteries getting new scans, official offices turning toward UAPs, and dismissed questions suddenly becoming organized, scheduled, investigated. That is what Miguel and Manoel seem to believe. They were not just wondering toward wonder, they were preparing for an event. In the second half, the investigation starts to fracture because the scene on Morro do Vintém looks almost too symbolic, but the physical evidence keeps pulling us back to the ground. The money they reportedly carried was largely gone, and the toxicology answer, the answer that should have told everyone what entered their bodies, never came through. Once that scientific door closes, every other door opens, and some of those doors are very dark. Here's the second item I'm pulling from the file tonight. It's a newspaper clipping from the Brazilian press coverage that helped turn the case from a local death investigation into a national mystery. You can almost feel the reporters realizing what they had. 2 technicians, lead masks, a cryptic note, possible capsules, strange beliefs, missing money, a hilltop above Niterói. And then comes one of the most haunting details in the later accounts. The toxicology exam was not successfully completed because the organs decomposed before useful testing could be done. That is the hinge of the whole case. If the capsules were poison, medicine, a hallucinogen, a sedative, or some experimental substance, that answer may have been sitting inside the bodies when they were found. But it slipped away. The men's bodies were there. The note was there. The masks were there. The best evidence of what actually killed them was allowed to disappear into decay. That failure turned the case into permanent fog. Now let's give the grounded theory its space because it deserves it. One skeptical angle, and honestly, it's a strong one, is that Miguel and Manoel willingly ingested something in those capsules and died from accidental poisoning during a spiritualist or contact experiment. That would explain the instructions. It would explain the calm arrangement. It would explain the lack of obvious violence. It might even explain the lead mass if they believed the substance would help them survive a burst of light, energy, or some visionary state. But here's where that answer starts to wobble. Who supplied the capsules? Why would two experienced electronics men trust the process? Why was so much money missing? Why the raincoats, the towels, the instruction to protect metals, the specific times? And if this was simply a tragic self-directed experiment, why does the note feel less like a personal plan and more like directions handed down by someone else? That does not prove murder. It does not prove a UFO. It does not prove spirit contact. But it leaves the feeling that a third presence is standing just outside the frame, holding the schedule. The paranormal side of the case keeps breathing because Miguel and Manoel were not random thrill seekers. The stories around them point toward men interested in contact, experimentation, and hidden forces. In a way, their ordinary profession makes the mystery more convincing, not less. Electronics technicians understand that unseen things can be real. A radio signal is invisible until the right equipment catches it. A current is invisible until it moves through a circuit. A frequency is nothing until something tunes in. So imagine men already living in that world, then adding spiritualism, UFO literature, and the 1960s atmosphere of saucers, space travel, and cosmic possibility. The lead mass might have been their shielding. The capsules might have been their doorway. The metals might have been part of the device, the offering, the instrument, or the proof. And the signal may have been something they expected to arrive from above, from beyond, or from whatever place sits between those words. When people say, how could they believe that? I think the better question is, what had they already seen, heard, or been told that made them climb that hill without turning back? Then there is the robbery and murder idea, which never fully leaves the room. If the money disappeared, someone may have known they were carrying it. Someone may have lured them with a promise of equipment, contact, initiation, or demonstration. The mask and note could have been real to the victims and useful to the killer at the same time. That is a grim possibility. Two men walking willingly into a trap because the bait was not greed, but belief. And yet even that grounded theory has shadows around it. A robber usually does not need a hilltop ritual. A murderer usually does not need lead masks. A con artist might, though. A manipulator might. Someone who understood their interests might have known exactly which words to use. Capsules, metals, signal. The right language can open a door in a person's mind. If Miguel and Manoel believed a message was coming, then the person who wrote that note may not have needed a weapon at all. The weapon may have been expectation. So what can we say at the end? We can say that two men went to Niterói and never came home. We can say they were found on Morro do Vintém in suits, raincoats, and lead masks, beside instructions that sound like the final page of an experiment. We can say their cause of death was never determined, and the toxicology failure robbed the case of its cleanest answer. We can say the missing money points toward human danger, while the mask and note point toward something stranger. And we can say this case endures because it refuses to become just one kind of story. It is a true crime, but not cleanly. It is UFO lore, but not provably. It is spiritual mystery, but not comfortably. Maybe Miguel and Manoel were tricked. Maybe they poisoned themselves trying to cross some unseen threshold. Maybe they expected a craft, a spirit, a light, a voice, a signal. Whatever happened, the final image remains. Two men lying under lead above a city waiting for something to answer. And if it did, nobody living was there to tell us what came down on that hill. The final line for me is simple and awful. They waited for a signal, and the only thing history can prove is that they never came home.
It's one of those cases where the rational explanation may be sitting right there, but it still doesn't explain the shape of the scene. The masks, the note, the timing, it all feels like someone was expecting the impossible to arrive on schedule.
And the fact that the toxicology answer was lost makes it feel like the case itself protected its secret. That is deeply unfair and also deeply creepy.
That's what keeps the lead mask case alive. It refuses to settle down. It keeps 1 foot in true crime, 1 foot in UFO lore, and 1 foot, somehow, in the spirit world. Juniper, I'll turn it over to you.
Some mysteries endure because there is too little evidence, but this one endures because every piece of evidence feels like it belongs to a different story. The masks suggest protection. The capsules suggest poison. The money suggests murder. And the signal suggests something far beyond the hill.
Tonight on the Shadow Frequency, we followed Miguel, José, Viana, and Manoel, Pereira de Cruz from an ordinary work trip to one of the strangest death scenes ever recorded, to electronics technicians on Morro do Vintém, dressed in suits and raincoats with lead masks, a cryptic note, missing money, and instructions to wait for a signal. Maybe it was an experiment. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe it was a belief system pushed too far. Or maybe, just maybe, they went to that hill expecting contact with something that has still not explained itself. Thank you for joining us for episode 351, The Lead Mask Case, The Men Waiting for a Signal. You can email us anytime at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com, and don't forget our website, shadowfrequencypodcast.com. Come back next time for another strange chase, another cold file, and another signal trying to break through the dark. You guys want to say goodnight?
Good night, everyone. Keep your eyes open, keep your questions sharp, and if someone hands you a set of instructions that ends with wait for the signal, maybe read the fine print twice.
Good night, all. Thanks for listening. And wherever you are, keep one ear tuned to the strange stuff. It has a habit of broadcasting when you least expect it.
Good night from all of us here at the Shadow Frequency. Sleep well, stay curious, and if the sky goes quiet all at once, don't assume nothing is listening.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your entertainment.